Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for Hearts and Crafts tonight. I'm Greta Johnson. I'm the host of Nerdette. For those of you who don't already listen to the show, Nerdette is a podcast that comes out first thing every Friday. We chat about pop culture, help you figure out what to do this weekend, and introduce you to interesting ideas, all while seeking out delight. And we have a book club. In case you don't know about it, we pick a book a month and we discuss it on the podcast on the last Tuesday of every month. Thanks so much for coming to this crafting hang. I hope it's super fun and that you brought a project to work on if you want, of course. I would love to know where you are joining us from and what you're working on. So feel free to drop a note in the chat to say hi. I'm especially excited about the idea of like everyone in Tucson getting together or whatever. So chime in over there. Before we get much farther, I want to thank our captioner, Leanne Hibbler, for providing real-time captions for tonight's conversation. You can find captions in the menu settings, so go there for that. Heads up, we are recording tonight's program. It's going to be available to stream on YouTube later this week. Don't worry, you will not be recorded. So if you want to share the link with a friend later on, you totally can. But like if you're not camera ready, that is totally okay. Someone who is camera ready this evening is my friend Shannon Downey, also known on Instagram as Badass Cross Stitch. Shannon, welcome to the virtual stage.
Thanks, Greta.
Hi, my friend. How are you?
This is great. Look at all these people.
I know, right? This is awesome. I'm really thrilled by this turnout. And thanks everybody for chiming in about what you're working on and where you are. Shannon, you're working on something, right?
I mean, I have something I'm working on. I don't know that I can speak and work on it at the same time.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But what do you got going on over there?
Just a little reminder for myself. I'm a little bit early in the game here. Just a reminder for those days when you're like, but I love people. But today, but I love people. It's going to go up in my bathroom as just that like little reminder, but you love people.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, you do love people, so it works.
I do so much.
I brought my big shawl thing that I'm working on.
Oh, hell yes.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll see if we can talk and work at the same time. I feel like we'll figure that out.
Very unlikely for me.
So later on in this hour, you all who are here now are going to have a chance to ask Shannon some questions yourself. So I'm very excited for that. We also got some really great crafty submissions. People took some pictures of stuff they're working on that we'll get to look at too. Shannon, I also we have some images of some of your work that I'm excited to interrogate you about because I've never gotten to do that because normally I just play it cool when we're hanging out. But first I thought we should start and just for people who have not heard about Badass Cross Stitch, but who are like, oh, this is a name that resonates deeply within my soul. How do you describe your deal?
Oh yeah. So that's tricky. I mean, what is my deal? I don't know. I mean, the low-key version of my deal is I'm a community organizer just disguised as a fiber artist. So I use embroidery to trick people into hanging out with me. And then I make them talk about everything that's super uncomfortable and that you're never supposed to talk to strangers about in public. So that's the core of what I do. I make my own art. I think that my job in all of this is to encourage and support people at both being beginners at something, right? So taking that risk of trying something
that is a vulnerable space to be in, for sure.
Totally. I think it takes so much bravery to show up to something, to try something you've never done as an adult, because we get so good at some things, right? We spend our entire life getting good at the things we're told we're good at. So naturally we get really good at them. And then we forget how to be a beginner. And so I'm come suck at something with me. It's going to be great. I'm it's a really vulnerable space to be in. And so I'm I always want to greet that with nothing but enthusiasm and support so that those folks will keep, trying new things, whether or not it's embroidery or not. I don't actually care. I just want them to have that experience of being open to being creative and trying new things.
It's so much fun to look around on the screen and see all these people with their busy hands doing stuff. It makes me so happy. So, Shannon, I don't know if you know, we're in the middle of a pretty horrible pandemic situation. which means that like you have had to shift so much from like, I just am picturing the difference between creating a vulnerable, open community space in a room with people who you can see and smile at versus like a Zoom situation. Do you think it translates effectively? I mean, I should hope so, given that like you've been doing it hundreds of times over the last couple of years.
You know, what's interesting is like prior to pandemic, I was like adamant, like I will never do this online. The magic happens in the room.
Sure.
Like you can't replicate that. And then the pandemic happened and I was like, just kidding. We're totally going to figure out how to make this work online because holy shit. And what was fascinating to me was how easily it translated to online, but it also opened up like everything I was doing were these like micro communities of people who are all in the same, you know, city area. So they had this like elements of a shared lived experience. They had sort of the same community issues that they were able to identify. And when we opened it up to this like global community, suddenly all of the conversations like shifted and expanded. And it was really interesting to see how quickly like cross collaboration started happening and like shared experiences globally, but then also distinctly different experiences that were coming up, and you know, people offering different solves that, you know, we probably would not have thought of had it not been, you know, somebody from Australia who was like, wait a minute, we had this, here's what we did.
It's so interesting to think about too. It's something that I've thought about a lot over the past couple of years while interviewing people from the floor of my bedroom closet, right? Because like that shifted stuff so much too, right? Because for the most part before that, I was meeting people in a studio and we were interviewing in like a very formal, like high quality audio space. You know, someone would come to the radio station and we would interview there. And sure, there are plenty of advantages to that, but there's also like this weird kind of surprising, I think, vulnerability that can happen when you're meeting someone literally where they're at and in what can be a very comfortable space where like they're just hanging out in their living room having this conversation as opposed to like having to put on hard pants and coming down to the studio, you know?
Oh my God, death to hard pants forever.
Yeah, is that ever going to happen again?
No, absolutely not. I'm wearing sweatpants right now. Don't tell.
I'm wearing purple leggings. I'm very delighted by them. So you talk about activism, like how I feel like you've kind of hinted at it a little bit, but like, did that come before the crafting for you then?
Yeah. I mean, activism's been my life. And then I was running a digital marketing company for 10 years and I was like connected to a device 24/7 and I hated everything. And I had no choice other than to be connected to these devices. And I was like, I have to do something with my hands. I need something analog. And I came across like a Star Trek cross stitch pattern on Etsy, which is like, nobody loves Star Trek more than me. Don't even try it, y'all. This is not a fight that you want to have. And so I was like, oh my God, I think I remember how to do that. Like I learned in 5th grade when I was forced to make a pink bunny, and that's stupid. So I never did it again.
Yeah. And
so I get this pattern, I download it, I stitch it, and I'm like, oh, 1, that was hysterical. 2, now I have this delightful little Captain Picard to hang in my house. But 3, like I felt different. And I like the next day I had like 3 good ideas. I hadn't had a good idea in months, you know, and I was like, oh, it's so interesting that I like was able to check out of the digital world for a couple hours without feeling anxious about it, because I was using my hands in this very tactile way that I wasn't even thinking about the device, because I was doing something with the hands that are always using the device. And so very quickly it shifted from Star Trek to just like using it as time to make space for myself to think substantively about the things that I was working on and the different issues and causes and movements that I was working in and supporting. And then I found as I was like stitching these pieces, you know, I'm having these, we'll go with profound thoughts, right? You can't say that about yourself, but I was having pretty deep thoughts.
I think you can, Shannon. I think we should own that, right?
Right. I had a few profound thoughts in my day. And I was like, I should share these with people because I bet I wonder if I can use this as a way to engage people online around these topics. So I started posting, but then posting my writing. So the idea was that the piece was going to stop people from scrolling and then get them to read. And then the content would get them to engage. And then it was like working.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted, we have some images of your art that I want to look at in a couple of seconds. But first, I just want to commend everyone who's chiming in the chat right now about their cat names and the fact that most of us are not wearing bras right now. That is not a direction I thought this evening was going, but I am delighted. So thank you all for that. Shannon, earlier you mentioned the idea of like really wanting to celebrate like kind of the beginner's mind and like sucking at things. What's a new thing that you're trying these days that you're kind of still sucking at, but you're enjoying?
I bought an Irish drum.
Yes.
Because I was like, I live in an RV. For folks who don't know, I live in an RV.
We need to talk about the RV.
I'm traveling the country, yada, yada. I live in an RV. One cannot live in an RV and not play an instrument in my world. Like those are my rules. I do not play an instrument, and I have tried every imaginable stringed instrument that has ever been created by a human, and I suck at every single one of them, like badly. And I was like, what is my issue with like an ukulele, which I can't wait to hear about yours. An ukulele is something that I should be able to play. It has 4 strings. It is this big. Come on.
Yeah.
Guess what? Cannot play an ukulele. I took 8 weeks of classes at the Old Town School of Folk Music, and I could not play a single song. So I wish you better luck. So then I was like, you know what? It's probably the strings. Let me go ahead and get like a wind instrument. Okay. So I got an Irish tin whistle. Because
I remember that. Yes, I do.
Right. So I started taking classes at the Irish Heritage Center, and my teacher was like, wow, this might not be your instrument. And I was like, it's literally a recorder. Like, come on.
Maybe you need the slide whistle.
Somebody told me spoons, and I was like, actually, what a brilliant idea.
Cool, actually, I could see you getting good at spoons. It's real. That's
great. Great. Thanks for that. So I can play Bridges Full of Stitches quite successfully on the Irish tin whistle. So then I was like, let me level up. No, that's not what happened. I thought about it, and I was like, I bet I need to play percussion because I am a tap dancer. So when I hear music, I hear percussion. And I was like, what I need is percussion in my life. So one night, I have a very particular kind of stress that only appears once every few years. But when it appears, the way that I handle it is to buy random shit.
Oh, I have that much more frequently.
Okay.
You too.
No,
but
like I'm not
an RP, which also helps, I'm sure.
Right? Like I'm not a consumer, so it's weird when this particular stress manifests and I buy something. So it manifested and I bought an Irish drum. And I promise you that I'm going to get good at this thing.
I am really looking forward to our band. I think
I am not yet even remotely. Like it is, yeah. Anyways, ukulele and Irish drum. This is gonna be awesome, Greta.
Yeah, we're gonna make it work. Okay, so let's look at some of your art so that for people who aren't familiar with you can know how awesome you are, how truly badass you are. I thought we would start with this one because this is one of the first pieces you made that like really went viral, right?
Yeah, that's the piece that keeps going every time it goes viral now because it literally never dies. I always know, like if my phone blows up and I'm like, oh, who did what? And every time it's attached to some, sort of epic failing by some man.
So yeah, what was the which epic failure inspired this piece?
Yes. I made that when Trump, the Ground by the Pussy video came out.
Mm-hmm.
So before he won. And I was like literally cackling. I was rage stitching. I was cackling because I was like, that's it for you. You're never going to be yeah. Well, anyways. So that piece like got some attention then, but not, not a ton. I mean, like, yeah. But then when Harvey Weinstein got sort of outed for who he is, all of the celebrities started sharing it. And so when that started happening, that piece just went like bonkers. And then it's made the rounds. So, Cosby, Kavanaugh just keeps coming back. But that like this piece is actually the only piece I've ever made that I feel no ownership of anymore.
Because so many people have sort of taken it on to tell their own stories.
Yeah, it became the illustration of so many people's Me Too stories. And then they were tagging me in them, to credit me. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, except I now need to read your Me Too stories and acknowledge them because that's really important.
Yeah.
And so I read probably a million Me Too stories attached to this piece. And like, as it went on and on, it was just really interesting to see my, my connection to it sort of stop being mine. And I'm like hyper defensive of this piece and protective of it, not defensive of it. So it got ripped off by a UK company, and they like slapped it onto the butt of some skinny jeans and started like selling them for 22 pounds. And it was like, pair with a bodysuit and boots for the ultimate babe vibes, inspired by Shannon Downey. And I was like, oh, you silly people, game on.
So I don't know, something I was thinking about hearing, with this one in particular and knowing how much it resonated with so many survivors, how like that's got to be really difficult for you to like to be exposed to all of these really intense stories and hear them and honor them, but also not just like become completely devastated yourself.
Yeah, that was a rough couple months, the first round. But at the same time, like, I know this exists. I hear these stories all the time. Sure. I was really proud of people for putting them out there and for sharing them. And so, I mean, it was almost like it was hard to read that much trauma, and that much shared trauma. But at the same time, like, I was so proud of everyone that like, I couldn't even, like, that's where I lived with it, was just in pride of their bravery and in gratitude that they used my piece and connected with my piece that way, that I could like make something that so many people would connect to in such a meaningful way. So I tried to live in that versus, the like taking on the trauma that I was reading about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and it is such an empowering action, right? To like take this and tell that story and really, Yeah.
I mean, I hope people felt empowered by it.
Let's look at another piece. Julia, I'm sorry you're crying. Hang in there. Tears of pride.
Are you making Julia cry? Julia,
I just
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, you're doing great. Everybody's just doing great. Shannon, I love this piece. And let's see, Eddie, can you zoom in on that at all? Or Shannon, you can tell us what the words are on there, right?
You want me to remember the pledge I wrote? I love this piece. Like, I don't say that, like, I don't make a lot of work that I think is beautiful or pretty, and that's on purpose. But I look at this piece and I feel great pride in how beautiful I think it is. Thank you. You have to say that.
No, I don't.
I rewrote the Pledge of Allegiance, which is what is hand embroidered on there. And let me remember what it says. I pledge allegiance to humanity. Oh, come on, dude. hold on, I have a sticker somewhere here. Here it is. Look, I can just read my own
good.
pledge.
I love that.
I pledge allegiance to humanity and to the planet we all share, one species living under the stars, seeking love and justice for all. So I was like hell bent on pledges and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I used to be a classroom teacher, and the pledge was like a really contentious moment in my classroom every year, mainly because I don't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And so that led to like this really always beautiful conversation with my students. It was always beautiful for my students, but not so much with their parents or administration. So I was only a teacher for 3 years. You can imagine why.
And what grade students were these?
Middle school.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So like we can have this conversation on like a really profound level. You know, and I didn't make anyone stand. I also did not stop anyone from standing. Like everybody got to do what they wanted to do. It was a moment of quiet if you were sitting. So I have this like long contentious history with the Pledge of Allegiance and just pledges in general. And so I was thinking a lot about that. And then this, I don't know what's happening on the screen, but I love it. Justin is really just adding to my work, and I'm really grateful for.
I also
it's like highlighting the good part. Like, oh, I really like this one.
Let's just think of it that way for sure.
Oh my God, I love it. He can't stop, won't stop. We're gonna get fired, Greta. I don't even work.
Oh my God, this is great. Okay, so and you made prints of this one, right? I mean, this is one that's like, I imagine it as a gorgeous fabric piece, but it also translates so beautifully to being like a screen printed poster or whatever too.
Yeah, it was the first one that I ever turned into a print, because it was the first thing that I thought like I was like, that's good. That's pretty enough to become a print.
This on my wall.
Yeah. So it was for an exhibition at the Lubeznik Center in Indiana. And the photographer who shot the show took an absolutely gorgeous photo of it. And when I saw it, I like stopped breathing because it looked like it was popping off the screen. And so that's when I was like, that must be a print, because, and when you see the print, it does look like it's popping off a screen, off the paper. It's really dimensional. I love it so much.
It's gorgeous. It's perfect. So speaking of exhibitions, another one I wanted to talk to you about was Exodus in general, partly because, am I right that a conversation we had at a pub kind of had something?
Yeah, dude, you inspired this. You inspired Exodus. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Do you remember, were we at Mooney's?
We were at Mooney's. Yeah. And it was, I think it's because I was, for some reason, talking about my high school boyfriend and the Mormon church, and how like you have to write a letter to request to be excommunicated from the Mormon church, or else they'll baptize you after you die and pretend like, and I could be wrong. Like if anyone, anyway, that was my understanding of things 20 years ago when he told me. Just right. But that's a conversation you and I had, and you like took off with it.
Well, because I was thinking about my other Mormon friend who was excommunicated and what that experience was like. And I was like, dude, I just stopped going to church, and that is anticlimactic. And it also is not like the resistance that I want to show in like my absolute opposition to the Roman Catholic Church. And so you inspired the shit out of me. I went home that night and I just started like, I mean, we'd had a few beers, or I had. And so I started like Googling, like, how do you get out of the Catholic Church formally? And it turns out like you can't, that there's like literally no way to get out of the Roman Catholic Church. And I was like, you can't have my soul. Like that can't be a thing. And so, you know, I think about 10 years ago, there was a loophole that was created by the Vatican by accident, that gave you an out. And so this Irish activism group found the loophole and they were like, oh my God. And so they made this whole website around how you can use this loophole to get out of the church. And I was like, this is brilliant. They closed the loophole real fast though. Real fast.
Oh, no.
And so I was like, well, I'm going to go through this process anyways, and I'll find a way to make this stick. And so I did the things. You write this letter that like, anybody who had any doubts whatsoever, like any waverings in their faith, would not be able to write this letter. Like you just couldn't. I happily typed away. And I was just like, this is great. Yes. Malarkey. Yes. I worked in words from my childhood that the priest used to say. Malarkey's squarely in there. And then you have to have somebody witness it. So it was my friend's birthday. So she was my witness. That was my birthday gift to her, which was the greatest gift I could have given her, according to her. And, but then so then you have to mail a letter to the archdiocese where you were baptized, and they're supposed to go into your records and mark you exiled or whatever, heretic. And then you have to tell your family and do a public announcement. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. A public announcement. Whatever will I do?
And this was your public announcement.
So this was the public announcement. That is a funeral pall. It is a giant ass letter. It took me a really long time.
You literally stitched the letter into, and what is that? Some sort of sacrament fabric, right?
That's a funeral pall. So it goes over the casket.
Oh, right. Okay.
So God. I thought that there was nothing more appropriate. But here's the best part, Greta, because I needed to find the way to get them to sign off on it, right? That mattered to me, but I knew they never would. But I was searching eBay, and you can buy holy water blessed by the Pope for $5 on eBay with a certificate that proves that the Pope, consecrated this shit. So I buy it. And then when I finished, I blessed it with the holy water from the Pope. And I was like, ha ha, blessed by the Pope. I win. Thank you. So I'm out.
You're literally out. You're good to go.
I'm literally out.
It's epic and amazing. Let's look at one more before we go to audience questions. I know y'all are posting questions for Shannon in the chat. We're going to get to them in just a couple of minutes. I just think this one is so sweet. And I think it speaks so much to kind of like what your mission is.
I want to be the Bob Ross of embroidery.
So yeah, I don't why does this resonate so much with you?
I love it. I was going to curse and I stopped. Everything about Bob Ross, everything about Bob Ross, just the idea, I remember watching him as a child, and while I never painted, I would watch the show and be like, I could do that, because he's teaching me. He made art so accessible.
Yeah.
And it was the first time a white man was showing painting as an accessible medium that could be taught, right? You could learn how to be a painter. You won't you're not just naturally gifted and therefore oh, you're an amazing artist, right? He was no, anybody can do this. Let me teach you how.
Yeah.
And that was transformative in my thinking about just art in general, because prior to then it was just either you're born with these skills or you're not. Either you're a savant or you are not an artist.
Right.
And so I do a lot in honor of Bob Ross and in the spirit of Bob Ross. I just always want everybody who comes to anything that I do to feel welcome, to feel safe. It doesn't mean you're going to be comfortable. You're probably not. And I'm not interested in your comfort, but I am interested in you feeling safe enough to get vulnerable. And so I will always build a space where you are safe and welcome and feel seen and heard. But I don't care about your comfort. I'm not trying to center that, right? The whole point is to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so this was I did a bunch of tiny leaders in cross stitch.
Eddie, do you have the other two that we could pull up there? You have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? And yes.
Aren't they just ridiculous? I just love them. I love making tiny 8-bit humans.
They're just perfect.
The Ruth Bader Ginsburg one is in her book, The Notorious RGB.
Oh my God. That's amazing. And then we've got Elizabeth Warren as well. And these are patterns that people can find on your website, right?
It's true. These ones are in my Etsy shop because I have a ton of free patterns on my website. So everybody should go there and get a ton of free stuff. But the ones that take me a much longer time and are far more intricate and detailed go on my Etsy shop. So you can download them for like $2 or $3 or something. I'm just trying to make back my time.
Well, yeah, it's so funny. Somebody just chimed in and said these were some of their first projects, which makes me
yay. That makes me so happy.
I know, right? Okay, so we have like a bunch of really good questions from people here. One of them, this is like deep embroidery nerdery, which I'm super into, is how do you keep your thread organized? We're just going straight to it, Shannon.
No. I laugh so hard because at the beginning of pandemic, it was every Sunday. Now it's 2 Sundays a month. I host a Sunday stitch up and everyone's invited. And it's now turned into like a little cult, I would say. It was an accident and it's a very positive cult and there's no rules and no one in charge. So well, I don't know that counts as a cult, but it's like my version of a cult, right?
The best possible cult possibility.
So one of the bigger points of amusement is how everybody organizes their floss. And like, I really make fun of my hyper organized folks because I'm not built that way. I don't organize my floss. My floss is chucked in a bucket and it is chaos.
That stresses
me out. Also, I'm colorblind. So like,
I always forget that.
Like, I don't actually like, most of my pieces are monochromatic, black and white, or just like a couple colors because like I can't see it. So what the fuck? Like, I'm not gonna invest in like making some big colorful thing that I can't see. Also, it makes it harder to do. So I just chuck it and like I don't care. But my people are so organized and there are so many systems for organizing. I call them bobbinators.
I am seeing a lot in the chat about bobbins, I will say.
Yeah. So I'm like, why would you spend time putting things on a bobbin and like that just feels like a ton of work. But but they're darling and they have these lovely containers where everything is like
that's what
organized by color. Sure. And I love it so much. And also I show them my bucket of floss and they like cringe and cry. And so it's this beautiful joke amongst us. So the short answer is I don't.
Okay. So do you, are your spices organized in your spice cabinet or is it just chaos in there too?
Dude, I have like 2 spices. I live in an RV.
Oh, right. RV. I did see someone in the chat ask earlier if you're traveling alone, and you are, though you are like finding people in every place that you're going and connecting with folks as safely as possible, given the circumstance.
Yeah. No, I'm traveling alone. I have the cutest dog in the entire world, Maggie. And she is with me, but it's interesting. I
feel like we could talk a whole hour.
That's a whole other show.
You know. Okay, so Sherry wanted to know, Sherry said, I get how you use your work to communicate messages, but how do you use it to organize communities?
Yeah. So it's a series of things depending on what's happening. Like, I mean, when I say organize communities, it's really about like creating communities. So anything that I can do to create opportunities for people to come together and connect. And then the idea is that while I might be the catalyst that brings them together, I want to be able to leave and have that community exist as a community because it's not about me, right? So it's like I sometimes have to be the mechanism that brings folks together, but then it's like, how do I create a space where that community continues on and solidifies and then does work, has impact. A lot of times I'm coming into a space that already exists and I'm supporting whatever work is going on in their community and finding like creative interventions to help them support the work that they're doing and expand it a little bit and get more people engaged and involved. So it becomes like a recruiting tool almost. Does that make
Yeah.
sense to that?
Can you talk a little bit about your is it called How to Be a Good Person?
How to be a good human?
How to Be a Good Human. Because I feel like that is a great example of what you're talking about right now, where you're like finding the right people to talk about certain things and amplifying the, you know, the links to, and like getting people to show up to this stuff, but you're not like a primary component of it aside from that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope it's never centered on me, but it's about like, you know, getting the people in the room. So How to Be a Good Human was just me listening. And so I heard my community, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, particularly at a time when the xenophobia was like sort of at its, you know, initial highest around anti-Asian violence. And I heard people say like, I want to do more, but I don't know what to do. And then I heard things like, I would have no idea what to do if I saw somebody being attacked. Like, I don't know how I would react or how I would intervene. And I realized like, I have this privilege of like having grown up in the labor movement, having grown up in different movements. So I have all of this knowledge that was learned. Right. And so when I say just go do something, like that's not helpful for people who don't, you know, like haven't been taught what to do. So I thought, oh, well, let me partner with Asian Americans Advancing Justice because they're doing bystander intervention trainings. And I'll just like offer some free workshops, invite people in. They can do a 1-hour workshop and learn about, you know, what to do if you're witnessing race-based violence out in public. And then, you know, we trained 500 people over, you know, 3 or 4 workshops around this. And it was like transformative for people. And even for me, like I thought I knew, and I did know, but then they were offering up things that I'd never dreamed of. And I was like, oh, this is so good. And so that sort of launched this How to Be a Good Human series where I was like, what other things do people want to learn how to do? And, you know, it's like, we all learn, well, a lot of us learn CPR, but like how many people know how to administer Narcan or how to identify a drug overdose from just a drug situation? And so I teamed up with Harm Reduction out in New York and we offered Narcan trainings. And then we went further in how to talk to young people about drugs from a harm reduction lens, how to harm reduction on college campuses. And then I was hearing all these people saying they wanted to go to therapy, but they'd never done it before. And I was like, oh my God, let me call my therapist. So I was like, hey girl, do you want to run a workshop on like therapy 101 for people? And she was like, of course.
You know, what's really funny is that we made it 38 minutes into this thing before using the word therapy.
Well, here we are.
We made it. And yeah, you did one about like unionization recently too, right?
Yeah, this last week. Oh God, it was so smart. It was really brilliant. It was just around like, what are unions? Like helping people understand the context and the history. And then like, if you like how they can help transform a workplace, like really beyond like DEI programs, right? And like actually transform organizations and businesses in favor of and in support of workers. And so it was a brilliant workshop. And we do Activism 101 for introverts and highly sensitive people. We've done that one a bunch of times because it's brilliant. And
that one sounds really helpful too. Cause yeah, I feel like that can be a really tricky thing for people to navigate if they, you know, like want to help, but also want to make sure they're protecting themselves and what they need.
That's the whole premise of this work. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So we're offering that one again in the spring as well. And all of these are like free or pay what you can. And if they're pay what you can, all of the money goes to the person presenting, right? So I just do this so that people have the resources.
That's very cool. On a lighter note, Paula asked who is actually wearing a bra. I have to say I am, but I'm on the clock. So, you know, whatever. Nope. You don't have to disclose, Shannon. If you don't.
I mean, look, it's cut off like right here. Why would I put one on?
Good for you.
I'm very strategic about my angling.
So Shannon, something we haven't talked about yet, which Allison kind of asked about, is like the history of crafting and craftivism, which doesn't always align with what you are doing these days. And Allison specifically mentioned like quilt making among people who were enslaved. But I don't know, like, I know you've been thinking about this stuff a lot lately, especially when it comes to sort of the like traditional demure, feminine, quietness of crafting in general. What's your take on that?
Well, the history or the present movement?
Let's start with the history a little bit and then we'll get to the present.
Okay. Well, so I think of craftivism on a like long historic global scale. And so while the word is new, right? Like 2003 was when this word came about. Like this is not a new thing, right? This has been going on since the beginning of time, craft and art as like social movements and in support of political, actions and whatnot. So, I mean, everything from like the Swadeshi movement and thinking about Gandhi as like, making your own textiles, going back to your like pre-colonization traditional, dress, and then like not buying British textiles, right?
Right.
So that like boycott, craftivism as boycott. All the way to like someone like Phyllis Latour Doyle, who was a spy during World War II, and in like Nazi Germany, and like gathering intel and like knitting it in Morse code and sending it back to her team so that they could make strategic military decisions, right? Like all of that to me is, like craftivism. It's just this new word that we've sort of put on it. But it's not a new thing, right? Like we're just sort of like, hey, this is a good word. That's fun.
It's cute. I mean, it's catchy. Yeah. Like you can pull a little hashtag on there and everybody's going to love it. Right.
Totally. I think my tension with the modern movement, which is like, people kept assigning me the word craftivist when I started and I hadn't heard it before. And I was like, it's a fun word, craft, activism, craftivism. That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you're doing it.
Yeah. And then, but then like I was in the spaces and I was like, this doesn't feel right. It just doesn't sit right with what I'm doing. And it took a lot of years of like really dissecting that to understand where my tension was. And I think that the tension was really around, craftivism being positioned as like an alternative to traditional means of activism. And in some cases, the language around it being framed as almost like it's like a more thoughtful way to be an activist, right? So there was some like real judgment going on through the language that was being chosen around like traditional means of activism and extreme means of activism and resistance. And I was not okay with that because I think craftivism has a beautiful space in the social justice ecosystem, but it's not like an alternative, right? It's a space. It's also a support mechanism, right? That should be accompanied with other activism tools and methods.
It's not like an excuse to opt out of marching or participating in other important ways as people say.
Or like individuals can opt out of that shit. There's plenty of people who are like, I cannot go to a march. And like, I feel you. I am comfortable in those spaces, but I understand that a lot of people are not. But that doesn't mean that a movement should be built without those things, right? Like craftivism can be a component to a compendium of a march or whatever, right? Like it depends on what's happening in the space. But the other thing that I was really struggling with, and I've only recently like sort of figured out, is the idea of like some of the words that get thrown around, like gentle, humble, quiet.
Yeah.
Ooh, you're really picking words I hate.
Well, and it kind of reminds me of something else that you've ranted about recently on the internet, which is the whole idea of like, this isn't your grandmother's knitting.
Oh yeah, I hate that.
Right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, why do you hate that? For people for whom it's not obvious why you would hate that.
I mean, it's wildly fucking insulting to say like, this is not your grandma's craftivism. Like your grandma was throwing down, right? Like for real, like look at the artistry, look at the incredible skills that have come before us and our elders and ancestors. And it is an insult to say, well, this isn't that, because that is somehow less, I don't know, important, less interesting, less powerful than this. Like we just have space now that we can take up because of the work that they did. And because of the work that they did, we're allowed to say things that they weren't necessarily allowed to say. And so it's like super important and there was a lot of subversive shit going on, right? It just wasn't as in your face as we're allowed to be now as a byproduct of the work that they did. So it gets me fired up. When somebody used that in the title of an article about my work, and I like got on the phone with them within seconds, and I was like, you are changing that title right now, or I'm writing a piece and you're not gonna like it.
Well, because it is your grandmother's crafting, literally,
and like half of what I stitch on is literally grandmother's work that I am just adding to.
Right.
Like, when I buy these pieces up at estate sales and antique shops, because the artistry and the technique is astounding. Yeah. And I want to work with that. And the fact that they're for sale for 50 cents in an estate sale is like infuriating.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. So speaking of estate sales, we got a question about the quilt project.
Of course we did.
We're like just close enough to the top of the hour where I feel like we can't hear that whole story, though it's amazing. And if you are not familiar with Shannon and her epic quilt adventure, you definitely should look that. What show was it that you ended up? Was it Kelly Clarkson?
Kelly Clarkson.
Oh my God, right. That whole thing, so epic. So Lee wanted to know where the quilt project went and if you're still coming across unfinished projects like that. Probably not doing a lot of estate sales these days.
No, and also I've been a little afraid after Rita's quilt to go back to an estate sale. To be honest with you, like, what am I gonna find? I don't know. Rita's quilt, look it up if you don't know what it is. That's what it's called, and that's where you can find it all over the internet. The quilt is with me right now in my RV. It was on display.
I didn't know it was with you in your RV.
Yeah, dude, what else am I gonna do with it? It was on display at the National Quilt Museum in Paducah, Kentucky, and they did a whole exhibit on it, and it was amazing. But then I was like, I'll bring it with me on my RV tour, and I'll pop it up so that everybody who worked on it can see it in person. And so I've been popping it up as I travel around. So it's been popped up a lot of different places. It was up for a few months in Texas and Massachusetts and New Orleans and Seattle. And so basically anywhere I go, if somebody says, oh, can we put up Rita's quilt? I say, yes, let me get it. and I show it off. And
so wait, can you get it right now? Or will that throw off the sweatpants?
So not happening. But sorry, girl.
No, it's okay. I love you too. It's fine.
I mean, my hope is that someday it will end up in like the Smithsonian or like somewhere public that is not a quilt focused space, because I want people to have to interact with it and experience it who might not go seek out a quilt, right? But I think the story is substantive enough, and the community behind it is so powerful that I think that it needs to be somewhere to share that story and what that story meant.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of building community, the way everyone chimed in to help put that thing together is just like epically gorgeous. And yeah, Anna, our producer, just put a link in the chat of the Twitter thread. And also everybody wave to Anna, Nerdette's producer, who's here helping out tonight because she's great.
Hi, Anna.
We got a really sweet chat message from Nikki, who just said that she's like poking her head in, and she just saw all of us crafting together and it made her very happy. And Nikki, it's making me very happy too. So yay. We got a question from someone who works at a job that's really demanding and is the opposite of creativity. And they said it's made them forget what it's like to be creative, and wondered if you had advice for being creative again after many years. Is it to buy an Irish drum?
Basically, that's what I tell everyone. just buy an instrument and suck at it. No. You know, the thing about creativity is the more you are creative, the more creativity appears, right? Like it expands. It doesn't, it's like love. Right. The more that you can never run out. And it just grows and grows and grows and expands. And so I'm always like, oh, if you've fallen off the creativity bandwagon, which absolutely happens, just like find one thing, do one small creative thing, and then like follow that track, because it's just gonna keep going. I don't know if you're an embroiderist or you want to be, but I have something called the Year of Stitch going on right now. And so every week for the whole year, I'm teaching a new embroidery stitch. And you get a sampler every 6 weeks. So you get a piece that you can practice the stitches on, and then like apply it to a fully fleshed out design. And they're videos, right? So like you can watch them whenever you want, and they're 10 minutes max because I suck at videos. And so like editing. You guys wait till you see some of these videos. I mean, it gets the point across. Okay, like you learn the thing, that's important. But my audio skills are deplorable.
I'm so delighted. It's something you suck at. That's good.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, girl, I suck at so many things. We're just talking about the things I kind of don't suck at right now. But I have a song for each video that is associated with the stitch, or some component of the stitch. So I'm also making a Spotify playlist and this Spotify playlist will be the most random assortment of songs you've ever heard in your entire life, because all they're associated with is a stitch. That's it. I'm going to be an amazing DJ someday.
Oh my God, that's so delightful. At least a couple of people have chimed in to say that they've been watching the videos and they're super helpful. Also, someone mentioned there's a knitting episode of Normal Gossip, the podcast, which I did not know, but I'm very excited now to go listen to. Also, is there a needle falter here? Am I seeing someone stabbing? Yes, right? Oh my God, I'm thrilled. So I want to make sure we have time to get to some of the submissions that people emailed in of pictures of crafts they've been working on, because they're amazing. We got a question from Amanda about talking to a Catholic family about being queer and just like the taboo-ness of the church. Amanda, I'm afraid we're not going to have time for that. But if you send me an email at nerdettepodcast@gmail.com, we'll like connect you to Shannon or whatever needs to happen to make sure you have the resources you need. So Amanda,
email me
that. But yeah, Eddie, can you pull up the images that people sent in, because they're amazing. Okay, so this is from Allison. Isn't this gorgeous?
Yes. That is needlepoint, and that is spectacular. I have never needle pointed.
Really?
Yeah, which is weird and interesting.
I know, it's funny because I know just enough about it to feel like that it's the same thing, isn't it?
No.
That makes sense. It's not. You're like, no, Greta.
It is and it's not. But that I wonder what you do. Do we get to ask them questions? I wonder what she's going to do with it, because it would be such a lovely, like, upholstered something.
I know. I wonder if it's going to be like a pillow.
Right? Like,
the trickiest part is not being able to ask these people follow-up questions.
I want it to be, you're going to need to email me and tell me what you're doing with it, because I really, in my head, have this like elaborate wooden chair, and that is the needle pointed like cushion for it. So
it is gorgeous. Allison V, email Shannon with your plans for that one. We want to know.
Thank you.
Here's one of my favorites. This one's from Alexis. I just think this one is so charming. This is an Arrested Development reference.
Yes. I just learned that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I never watched Arrested Development, but my dentist plays it.
Oh my God. That's in Chicago. This is Chicago dentist?
Yeah. While you're getting your teeth cleaned, they play Arrested Development. So I've watched many an episode, and I understand the banana reference now, because I happen to land on that one while getting my teeth cleaned. That's some really perfect cross stitching right there.
Isn't it great? There is always money in the banana, Stanley. It's true. Let's take a look at another quilt we got. This is from Linda. I love seeing these pieces coming to. This is a quilt, right? This is like not my crafting strong suit.
Yeah, I mean, that looks like a modern crazy quilt.
Isn't it amazing? I
mean, I don't know that they would describe it that way, but it's freaking spectacular. And I think it's fabric, but it looks like from here, like a million needles down that middle part there, which is like really exciting to me that fabric is center right there. That's gorgeous.
It's amazing. Oh, so Jill just asked, where do we share photos? So these are photos that people submitted ahead of time. But I want to say, so we have a Nerdette Facebook group called Nerdette Headquarters, which Shannon is actually also in. And we'd love for you to share pictures of what you've been working on tonight in there. So I think Anna's going to start a new thread so everybody can just like put a bunch of pictures in there, because I think that would be really fun to see everybody's stuff.
I want to see what everybody is doing.
I know, right? Okay, so let's look at another one. This is from Maurice, and it's gorgeous.
Oh,
isn't that so beautiful?
That's some ridiculous quilting right there.
I know. I just love that so much. Those colors are so beautiful.
Wow. Yeah. These quilters are gonna rope me in. They're trying so hard.
It's a matter of time. So we also got some really fun knitted ones. Here's some really great mittens from Sherry. These are so beautiful. And obviously it's not just knitting, right? Because you can't knit those cool nubbins. Well, the bottom balls probably.
I don't even know how you make that. That is magic. That's a magician who made that.
I just love that so much. The texture of it, the color, it's just like perfect.
They almost look like French knots.
I know. Yeah. I think it would involve like stitching something in addition to like actually making the mitten.
Yeah.
I guess.
Huh.
They're beautiful though. And then we also got someone's working on a hat and kind of partway through, which was fun to see. This is from Liz.
Ooh, so many
colors. I know. And look at all those yarns.
I want to rub my face in that back right hand yarn, that pink.
Yes. That's like alpaca or something.
I'm gonna like rub my face in it.
Just super fluffy. Yeah, good eye, Shannon, on the super soft one. And then finally we got these really cute little gnomes.
Oh my God.
I've never done any 3D knitting, but they're just so cute.
Look at their little arms.
I know.
I love them.
So charming.
Oh, that's joy right there.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm. That's joy.
Oh, so Denise, I don't think that is from Liz who calls in every episode, but Liz who calls in every episode is also here. So just shout out, hi Liz in Minnesota. I saw you earlier. So yeah, I would love for y'all to share pictures of what you've been working on this evening over in the Facebook headquarters or in the Nerdette headquarters group. If you haven't joined yet, just ask to join and we'll get you signed up quick. Yes, we have an event feedback survey. We would love to hear what you thought of this. If you would like to do it again, if Zoom is cool, if you'd rather be in person, all the good things. What are the other things I want to tell you? Oh, for more about Shannon, check out her website, badasscrossstitch.com. Shannon, thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much about you.
This was delightful. I'm so grateful for everybody who came and made and asked questions. And yeah, this was super fun. I hope that I get to hang out with all of you IRL.
Yes. So yeah, Shannon, we didn't really get to this, but you're traveling all over the US and you're visiting lots of different places. So it's worth at least going to that website to be like, is Shannon coming to Denver? Because the answer is yes, Shannon is coming to Denver. So do that. Also, listen and subscribe to Nerdette Podcast if that's a thing you want to do. And yeah, filling out that survey would be super helpful. We're going to email you a link to that also in I think tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. And thanks again to our captioner, Leanne Hibler, and just all of the help that we got this evening, especially from Eddie Medrano and Al Keefe and Anna Bauman and just the crew. So thanks to all of you for coming too. And Shannon, you're the best. This was super fun.
Love you.
Love you. Take care, everybody. Hang in.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.